A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional.
Hello and welcome back to Oversharing. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Dr. Naomi Bernstein.
Great to be back here with you. How was your weekend? What were you up to?
Weekend was great. Saturday was busy, but I did, interestingly, in all of my groups, we are doing a 24-hour screen-free challenge. So I did it too. I did it from Saturday morning to Sunday morning. And as expected, it was awesome.
Oh, I thought you were going to say challenging.
No, I think a lot of people, there were moments of challenge, but coming out of it, I feel like this is something that I would love to do like every weekend or once a month, or it's hard. Jeff didn't love it because
you didn't look at your phone at all. Back up. Tell me what this entails. So what is a screen? What is not a screen?
Yes. Here's a couple of caveats. And in the group, I tell people try it. I'd rather you try it and do some of it. If you can't be 100%, I'd rather you at least do some of it than none of it. So one of the things that I said that we could use was GPS. If you're going somewhere, I didn't want anyone having car accidents, pulling out their MapQuest directions from 2002.
Right.
So I did turn it on for GPS. And that was pretty much it. I turned it on at one point because I was meeting up with Jeff at this baseball game that Brooks had. And I forgot to tell him what field we were at. But I didn't use it. I was with Maddie and I had her turn it on and I had her message him and just let him know where we were. And the funny thing is he found it anyway. He figured it out.
Is this just for phones or is this TV, computer, iPad, everything?
Yeah, all of it. So the probably the hardest part for me was it was Saturday night and I've been obsessed with this I think I don't know where it is, maybe Amazon Prime, this show called Cosmos. Okay. Which is with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And it's a whole series on the universe. And it kind of spans from outer space universe. And then he does an episode about the universe inside a drop of water.
Okay.
How there's these little microorganisms that create this whole little universe in a drop of water and then expands to so my exciting Saturday night is that I like to watch this on the big screen and didn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is kind of nerdy, but if you're into any of this, it's very cool. And
it's cool. I'm joking. Yeah.
And it's good for you. I think it's good for your mental health because it puts things into perspective when you think about things on this large scale. But anyway, that's a tangent. So that I didn't do that I wanted to do because that was screens. So I did not do any kind of screens for 24 hours. We played Scrabble instead, which was fun. And even Brooks, who's 7, played, which was cute. So it was a good chance to try something new that we hadn't done before. But the big takeaway, I think, for me.
Was anyone trying to contact you?
Yeah. So, okay.
Did you missed a text?
Yeah. So I missed a bunch of texts. I was going to text the family group chat and just say hey, I'm doing this, but I really didn't want to hear everyone's opinions about
jokes
it.
And yes. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I didn't want to hear everyone's jokes about doing this. So I figured if anyone really needed me, they would probably contact Jeff and I would find out about it. But yeah.
Right. Or you know what you could say, if you get a phone call, you can pick up a phone.
Yeah, that's not really a screen.
If someone's calling you, they probably really need to speak to you.
It's important. Yeah. So I said to my groups, depending on your own situation, I was if you want, you might need some prep for this. You might need to tell some people that you're doing this. You might want to get ahead of it. You might want to just copy down information from your phone that you need. Because part of the thing was turn your phone completely off. Because if you leave it on for a phone call, then when you get that phone call, there's that temptation. Now you see all these.
Just check the other stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Missed text messages. So when I turned my phone back on Sunday, I had a bunch of this was one challenging part. I had a bunch of missed texts from people that probably thought I was being rude or not answering them or ignoring them. So I just started off every text with like, sorry for the delay. And then
I've been doing a challenge. Did you explain the challenge?
No, I didn't. I could have. But it was
you don't owe anyone anything.
Yeah, kind of. I think for some people, I wrote my phone was off yesterday.
Right.
Which they'll probably think was weird. But
do you think like, okay, so you were with your family on Saturday. You were with, the kids and Jeff. Do you think this would have been a harder challenge if you were like single?
100%. 100%. I think the hardest part of this is just feeling very alone, probably for a lot of people. Like, right. You can do this challenge.
You don't have to think about anything negative because you have the constant distraction.
Yes. You can do this when you're busy. Like I had some people in my groups being like, this feels like a cheat because I'm so busy that I'm just going to be busy and I'm not going to really be needing to entertain myself or connect with people through my phone. So this feels like so easy. But I do think if you're single and you don't have plans and you're alone, this is a whole different challenge. So I'm glad you asked that question because I don't want people to be like, oh, of course, so easy for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like you're not someone who's like on their phone all the time anyway. And I assume that's just because you're like, you have a full-time job and you have 3 kids and there's like a lot. Like I wouldn't say, I think it was probably a challenge for you, but I could imagine someone with less like built-in stuff.
If you live alone, I think this is a completely different challenge because it's really quiet. You're feeling disconnected. You're totally alone with yourself. Like a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening to the show, listen to podcasts to feel kind of like, they're have company or with people or are connected. So I totally agree with you. It's a completely different challenge if you live alone or are single. But I still think it's a good opportunity to push yourself in that way to just be with yourself for a day.
I agree. Maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, try it.
Give it a go.
Give it a go. The hardest part for me, one was like, kind of getting back to people the next day without getting into a whole thing about what I was doing.
Right.
And feeling like, like for example, like, someone, one of my friends in town, like messaged me about something. I didn't get back to her the next day. And then it was like a little group chat, me and one other person, and they were talking. I wasn't participating. Then I got back the next day and like nobody acknowledged that I responded. They like moved on. And there was a little bit of me that was like, they're probably like, thinking that I don't care or thinking that I'm like rude or.
I think they're probably just like over the conversation because they're totally. Like, oh, I don't need to. Yeah.
But that thought did enter my mind. And for me, because I'm not like the biggest on social media, I think social media would be hard for a lot of people, was just having patience in like, I want to know the answer to something and I'm not going to immediately get the answer. Like, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? Or
right.
I wonder, what time that appointment is that I have on Thursday, or some random fact that I feel like looking up that I'm not going to look up. So,
yeah, you basically lived like you were in like 1995.
Right. We're like, okay, I'll find that out on Monday when I go to work and I turn on my computer and I get all of my information back again.
Right.
That was hard, but I think it's really nice. A lot of what we talk about on here are like people that struggle with timelines and the unknown and not knowing how their life's going to turn out. When am I going to meet my person? When are we going to get married? When am I going to have a baby? When am I going to get a promotion? And so the big picture stuff, I think, sometimes can be helped by practicing patience with the little things.
Maybe the Amish really have it all figured out.
Yeah. Could go live down there for a couple of weeks, come back to real life. You'll be like, wow, I can find out anything I want.
Yeah, it's like magic.
So, if you give it a try, you don't, no shame. Let me know that you're doing 24 hours screen free. I can field your calls if you'd like.
I love it. Maybe I will try it. I'd have to think of the right time. It would be very difficult. Maybe can you start with like half a day?
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things we were talking about in the group was, let's say you do have a phone call that you need to make. Like you could do 12 hours, do your phone call, and then 12 hours. Or you could start with half a day.
Right.
Something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But for those people that were busy, I was kind of like, try it when you're busy and then try it when you're not. Like for myself, I wonder if I just had a day to myself and I didn't have my phone, that would be a lot different and a lot more challenging, I think.
You have to like get into a book or something.
A book, a coloring, something creative.
Yeah. I mean, we all know what it feels like on like a micro level. Like either your phone dies, you're out and your phone dies, or your phone's in, God forbid, upstairs.
That's the good thing about kids. Yeah. You can be like, go upstairs and please get my phone. And they're like, okay, sure.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Reason enough to have children, right?
Yeah, right.
Someone to always go get your phone.
Right.
Love it. All right. Well, let's get into our emails.
Let's do it.
I like this challenge. It sounds like it would push you, an easy and hard way to push that discomfort feeling. Like obviously hard because it's hard to do, but easy because it's not like, oh, you have to sign up for a class or
free.
Get into a thing. It's more about the not doing something. And I usually find not doing something is harder than doing something.
Like I do think people would rather spend $300 on like a class in tolerating discomfort with a teacher where they show up than this.
Right. Inaction, very difficult.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. And if you want to join one of Dr. Naomi's therapy groups and, get yourself some weekly like instillment of this kind of thing.
Yes.
How do they do that?
Yes. Come find me at naomibernstein.com. We have lots of groups, Monday nights, Tuesdays. And we will find you a spot. Come join us. We do all these different kinds of challenges. This is one, but we have lots, and you'll hopefully grow and learn. And the community piece is the biggest piece. You show up every week, people that want to hear what you have going on. They want to listen. They want to share perspective, all the things. So come join us, naomibernstein.com.
Check it out. Or you can subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe. You get 2 bonus episodes a month. We have our 2 out for September that are already out. So check them out. And then also you get all the episodes ad-free and a day early. So get involved. We love our subscribers. And let's get, also you can watch us on YouTube if you're more of a watcher than a listener, or you can watch on Spotify video. So let's get into our first one. It was supposed to be Craft Our Text, but we'll get into how it was we got an update this morning just 5 minutes before we started. So it's going to be more of a commentary, but this is a very common thing. I'm sure you hear about this all the time in therapy. I have so many friends who have gone through this exact situation. So let's get into it, and then we will give our 2 cents.
All right, let's do it.
All right, I'll read it. Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi, longtime listener and very grateful for both of you. I'm writing in for some advice. My boyfriend broke up with me and moved out very unexpectedly last week. He's 31 male and I'm 28 female. We were living together for over a year and dating almost 5 years. He did not give me any reason for why he ended things. He just immediately started crying and struggled to get words out. It basically came down to him not feeling the same way about me, not feeling the same way about our future. And he did say the classic, "It's not you, it's me." Ugh. Then he was moved out of the apartment within a few hours. At least be more original.
Yeah.
Okay. For more background, and he moved out within a few hours. That's a lot for one day.
Yeah.
For more background, I think he's been struggling. That's not a good day to not have your phone. For more background, I think he's been struggling with depression and his mental health on and off since before we met. He had some intense things happen in his personal and family life before we met and refused to go to therapy to get help. He also has been less motivated to exercise and eat healthy in the past 6 months or so. At the start of summer, I had a talk with him that I felt we were in a bit of a rut, which is normal and happens sometimes when living together. I felt like we should go on more dates and do more little things to show each other how happy we are to be with one another rather than getting in the habit of just living our lives. The rest of the summer was great and things felt back to normal. He also kept talking about our future all summer. He wanted to get our own phone plan together and start seriously saving to buy a condo together in the next year or two. He also asked me questions about what kind of proposal and wedding I'd like in the future. He said this conversation a few months ago about getting in a rut had him thinking all summer about how he feels about me. He said if he's not sure at this stage, then it's not fair to me to keep dating. So it's all very confusing to me, and I definitely feel blindsided. It's hard to have closure because of how fast it ended and how little he said. I think he was feeling like he isn't in a good place mentally and he doesn't feel like he can be a partner right now, but that might just be something I'm telling myself while going through the breakup. This is her first ask. We'll get an update soon. First, she said, can you help me craft a text to him asking to meet for coffee to get closure and to give back some of his belongings and mail? But if he would have nothing to say, even after a month or two to think and reflect, then I'm not sure I'd want to meet. On the other hand, it does make me sad that we're ending our story like this and could be nice to have another conversation. I'm having a difficult time recognizing my life right now. The life I thought I was building is suddenly gone. I do have friends and hobbies and a life outside of him, but it's still hard. I'm living in our apartment and doing some of our routines without him. Thanks so much for your help. A betch in shock. And then this morning, we got a additional email from her, which is great for more context. And then she said, we had to add it in because she wrote her own, and we're gonna get into it. She said, hi, Jordan and Dr. Naomi, following up with screenshots. This is our entire text exchange in the weeks after the breakup. I'd love to know what you think, especially as I'm preparing for our in-person conversation in a few weeks. Thanks for all that you do. Recently subscribed. I'm listening to Oversharing a lot. It's been very comforting to listen to whenever I don't want to feel alone. Smiley face. That's very nice. All right. Yeah. So let's read these texts. I'll be him. You can be her.
Okay. So this is... They're also a couple days apart, so we'll delineate
we'll read the dates too. Okay. All right. Hi, sorry for reaching out, but did I get any delivery from Stitch Fix at your place? The nerve.
Right.
Eat it.
So that's at 10 a.m. She answers at 5 p.m. It's not here, but I'll look out for it.
Okay, thank you. And then he texts again the following Tuesday. I don't expect you to answer, nor do I need you to answer. I just want you to know that I'll forever be sorry with how things ended up. You really deserve something real and genuine. I find that text to be annoying.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I agree. Well, she calls him out. So she says,
right.
I'm not sure what to make. So that was Tuesday he sends that. So she very coolly waits 2 days to respond.
Yes.
She says, I'm not sure what to make of that message. This has all been really confusing. I'm not sure if I'm misinterpreting, but it sounds like you're saying that what we had for the last 5 years was never real or genuine from your side, which would be really hurtful. Also, I've been finding some of your stuff that you left here, including your social security card. I've been putting a box together and was thinking we could meet in a few weeks so I can give it to you. That gives us time to think about anything we want to say to each other. I'd like to sit down to talk to get some closure. Is that something you feel like you'd be able to do? If not, then we can plan a time for you to pick up the box once I'm done cleaning out the apartment.
Yeah, sure. That sounds nice. Thanks for not throwing anything out. Okay. I thought her message was good.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I mean, it's annoying that he texted that, but it's nice that he gave her like the opening.
Yes. She didn't have to like reach back out after getting broken up with and having her whole life like turned upside down.
Yeah. Like but that is an annoying message because it's like, it's like an I feel really, what did he say? He said, I don't expect you to answer or need you to answer is annoying. It's like, I'll decide when I'm going to answer if I want to answer.
Kind of like, feel free not to answer.
Yeah. If you don't answer, right, you're like cooler. Like,
right.
Don't like, right. You don't have to, anyway, I find it an annoying thing, but whatever. So what do you get this a lot? This kind of thing?
Well, the hardest part, I think, first of all, I just want to validate that being in the situation that they were in together for 5 years, living together for a full year, then having him what seems like out of the blue without like a bunch of lead up conversations, break up with her and move out that day is really hard.
Yeah.
Breakups, I think healthy breakups happen over the course of like a series of conversations where you talk about something that's bothering you, you try to fix it, maybe it's not getting better, you talk about it again, you have a few conversations, you say you're thinking that maybe this might not work, and it sounds like he just kind of ran in there, dropped the bomb, and ran out as fast as he could.
I will say, I talk about this on You Up all the time. The way you just described the healthy breakup, that is how women break up.
Right.
Men break up, they don't say anything. They just secretly think about shit for like a long time. They don't say anything, and then they just leave.
Yeah.
Women are always like, please change, please change, please change, please change. And then like it has to be so ignored or so not that they finally break up or leave. I just feel like men do this all the time. Maybe it's like a I think it's maybe women's more openness to like working on things with a partner or changing someone, whereas men are like, I'm not going to try to change this person. I'm just like either going to accept them as they are or I'm going to leave, and the decision's going to be all in my head.
Yeah. Well, so I think you're right. You're right. I think part of it is maybe that what you're saying, like, I don't think I can change this person, but I think part of it is just men in our culture are just kind of taught that their emotions are their own problem, and they're not, especially emotions that are about the other person that might upset them. Like, those are not ones that you share. So like, even I have a son, he's 7, and I think about this because I'm kind of like, I want him to get used to sharing his feelings and like talking about what's going on in his head and not feel like that's just my problem. And I talk about like what I do and what I want and, like things that happen to me. Like, I think it would be a nice shift if our culture kind of made it easier for men to talk about like their innermost feelings, and the hardest of which are, I have this feeling, it's about you, and I'm going to say it. Like,
right.
And that's one of the things that we do in group therapy. Like I maybe shared on here a few weeks ago, like talking about how we feel about each other with each other when it's not entirely positive.
Right. And before you're like ending the relationship.
Yes, exactly.
With anyone.
Yes.
Right.
So I think we need to, and there are women that are like this. I don't think it's entirely male, female, but yes, there is.
I agree. But I'm saying like, it seems to me when I hear a lot of these stories of like anecdotally, when I hear about when I hear about my friends breaking up with their boyfriends, it's because they were like, kept saying, there's this thing that you're doing. There's this thing that you're doing that I really don't like, that I like,
right.
that I cannot, that you need to change, and the person doesn't change. And then I feel like a lot of the men I've spoken to or read about or hear about are like, just kind of the women are always blindsided, seemingly.
Right.
And there's less, like you said, conversations and build up, and you don't know it's coming quite as much.
Right. Yep. I do think there's, this feeling of, I can't communicate this until I've made up my mind, which is why I think he like dropped the bomb in the apartment and ran, because he's like, I've made up my mind. I don't want to be like talked into it. The U-Haul truck is outside. I'm loading it up and I'm leaving. And it's really hard because they've been together for a really long time. So I want to just validate how hard this is to have this happen in this way. It does. And the other part that feels, and again, I think you're right, it just comes from a difficulty communicating on the part of this man, is that it sounds like he was doing all of these things throughout the course of the summer, talking about, shared phone plans and getting an apartment together and doing all the things that I think he thought that she wanted, and maybe was like, okay, maybe I'll just try to jump on this ship to Forever Town,
right,
and do all these things, and then was like, nope, that doesn't feel good either. So now I'm out. Which that's really hard because it made it seem like he was heading in that direction and then just pulled the rug out from under you.
Yeah. And he's had months to be thinking about this decision. and processing it. And she's, again, just kind of like hit with it and then just alone. And I'm sure it feels like a death in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Breakups are feel kind of like a death with like a added cherry on top of rejection versus death, which is just death without the rejection.
Right. Not little less personal.
Right. So breakups are really hard. Honestly, like that is one of the things that I started off my practice with in the beginning, was just helping people get through breakups, because those are the ones that can feel like the most intractable of life events and the hardest to kind of get out from under, like people that suffer for years.
So she has this meeting coming up. I thought her text was good. I thought she explained herself really well. It was like vulnerable without being too much. And so she's got this, and I thought his response, that would be nice, continues to be annoying.
Yeah. He didn't say, okay, sure, that would be nice. I don't think it was so bad. I think it was kind of like, I would like that too. That would be nice, as opposed to like, yeah, okay, that sounds fine.
I guess. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, he needs his Social Security card back. So
that's true.
He's being on his best behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have this, I'm sure this is like the most awkward about, I've seen many men also, just not to scare her, but I've seen many men back out of this last minute. Where they agree to this conversation and then it gets closer and they're like, I can't handle asking. Because like, I understand why if you break up with someone that you're like, I don't want to tell you all the things that I was thinking for all these months. I don't want to tell you all the reasons that I couldn't be with you to get forever. Like, that sounds mean. I don't really want to do that.
Yes.
So I can understand why that would be like, if you break up with anyone, to have a conversation, to sit down with them is like scary and uncomfortable and you wouldn't want to do it. And again, not to defend the monster, but I can also see why, like, you know, the fact that he left so abruptly does probably mean that it was very difficult for him. He probably knew that if he sat and he talked, he might not be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're 100% right. That's why people avoid this, because you're hurting someone with the breakup, and then it's almost like you're going to do more damage by telling them, you know, what it sounds like he probably wanted to say, which was like, I just didn't see my future spending the rest of my life with you. Like, once we started kind of going in that direction, although maybe he was initiating that. That's what I'm kind of unclear about, like, who was initiating all the like shared phone plan. Maybe it was him, and like buying an apartment together. Like, that is weird if he was initiating that while he was having doubts. So,
right. Well, maybe she had this conversation with him about like, we need to like get out of our rut. So he was like, all right, I'm going to try. And like, I'm going to go all in for like a little bit, which he did for the summer. And then he was like, and he did it. And then he was like, oh, that doesn't feel right.
Right. Or interesting, right? Like, maybe what she meant, what I interpreted her meaning by rut was like, let's be more sexy. Let's go out more. Let's like not sit on the couch in our PJs. Let's like tell each other nice things. Let's feel like a little bit more of an excitement for each other. And it sounds like he interpreted that as like, shit or get off the pot. Like, let's move the relationship forward and like get married, or like get a shared phone plan or buy an apartment. Like, maybe there was a miscommunication in that initial conversation.
But I think that probably is what she wants, even if she didn't say that outright. And so I actually do think he did the right, if he was like not planning on marrying her and he knew that at this point in the relationship, I actually do think he's done the right thing in leaving the relationship. And he does say that. He says, like, I don't think it's fair to you to like stay here if I don't see this lasting forever.
Right.
So I think there is something to be said. I don't think that was like the wrong move. I think it's the way he's gone about it, again, that feels more painful, or not honoring the relationship by having these conversations and letting it sit and kind of like, I don't know. And would that be better for her? Probably. I don't know.
Right. And I think you can get a little bit, perhaps, in this tiny text exchange where he says, hold on, let me pull this up one more second, where he says, sorry for things, for how things ended up. You really deserve something real and genuine, which I agree was like not nice. But I think what he was feeling was like, I was kind of faking it a little towards the end. Like I wasn't feeling entirely like, yes, can't wait to spend the rest of my life with this person. He was kind of like going through the motions. And then when he said real and genuine, rightfully so, I think anyone would have done that. But this is a microcosm of why breakups are hard. Is she's like, are you saying that our entire relationship was not real or genuine? And he's like, like that's not that's not what I said. I think sometimes giving some of these guys a little bit more credit, I think men sometimes feel in these conversations like it's like a gotcha.
Right.
He's trying to say what he wants to say, but he doesn't say it right. Women are more verbal. Typically, these are all stereotypes. Fine, whatever. Typically more verbal, better at expressing emotions verbally. So he's saying you deserve something real and genuine, and she's coming back at him. And then I think a lot of times guys end up feeling like, I don't want to get caught. Like, I don't want to get in trouble for saying what I feel.
The wrong thing, or making it worse by saying something that feels authentic. Right.
Right.
So let's talk about the questions she should ask and not ask. Like unhelpful questions that she might want to ask, but shouldn't, versus questions that actually might help her feel like she could move on.
Right. I think a great question for her to ask would be, and this is what I put in my original craft, my text, was like, I'd like to have a better understanding of like how your perspective or how your feelings changed, when and how your feelings changed. Like, I think a timeline of like what happened for him might be helpful because it seems kind of twisted.
Right. When did you order the moving truck? What day was that set up?
Yeah. Right. I do think that would be helpful just to understand like how his feelings changed. I'm sure that's a big question because it seems like, how do we go from shared phone plan to U-Haul?
Right. I think that's a good question. I can imagine she wants to ask this question. I want to know your perspective as a therapist if this is a bad question to ask. Why do you feel like you didn't want to be with me forever? What is it about me that you felt like you couldn't commit to? I feel like that's one thing she wants to ask. Yes. I don't know if that's a helpful question, but I could see like that being almost like her number one thing is like, why?
Right. What is it about me? Yeah. I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all been in that place where you're like, I just don't feel enough of a connection. Like, and I can't live without you feeling. Like, I don't think it's going to I don't think people want an answer like, you weren't ambitious enough, or I was afraid you weren't going to be a good mom, or I didn't, your breath smelled, or
my mom didn't like you. Or
right. Like, I just don't, I think I don't think it's going to be something like that.
I think if it is something like that, they wouldn't tell you or something. Right. Or like, again, I think for women, like, I'm trying to think of the reasons women break up with men. It's like, you get really drunk and I don't like that version of you and you don't really seem to have wanted to change, or I want you to be more thoughtful and you just don't really seem to be like trying very hard. Mm-hmm. And again, those are things I think you get before the breakup. I don't think she's been getting any feedback on things that she's been doing this whole time.
Right. Yes. So yeah, I mean, maybe it's a good question to say, are there any things that you have? Maybe a better question would be, are there any things that were making you doubt our compatibility long-term that you haven't shared throughout our relationship? Because I do think there might be those little things that are adding up. And it could be. I think it's probably more of just like I don't feel it enough to commit to forever. That's because otherwise, I think if he did feel it enough to commit to forever, but she got drunk too much or something, he would say that because he wouldn't be willing to give up the connection because of this thing. So I think if he's not communicating anything, it's probably something more like that, because that's hard to there's nothing,
Right.
feels like there's no point in communicating it because there's nothing she can do about it.
Right. Well, yeah. And if there was something she could do about it, he would have brought it up earlier.
If someone's madly in love, they're going to work through something like that. Because they're so desperate not to lose this relationship, versus if the connection is a little bit waning. And a lot of guys feel like if the connection's waning now, what's it going to be like in 15 years?
Right. Well, they don't realize you have to work on a connection
I know.
sometimes too, I think,
I know.
is the other annoying part, which is
Yeah.
like maybe something he's not ready to do, to work on a
Right. And
connection when it dims.
you don't want to feel like you're convincing someone, like coming into this conversation being like, hey, a healthy person communicates when something's wrong and we can talk through it. Unless that is, to me, I'm like, if he's going to move all of his stuff out because he so badly doesn't want to communicate on issues, then she's dodging a bullet.
Right. And he's not going to tell you that now if he's the kind of person who would do that. So I think you can ask it. I think you're going to get back something along the lines of exactly what you just said, which is I just didn't see it being forever. It was just a feeling. It's going to be really vague. You're not going to get anything concrete. And then I guess my last question for you, that on behalf of the listener, is like, what can she do leaving this conversation like to move on?
I mean, even before, I think maybe what would be good is just to like journal some of this out before going in, kind of journal it, see if there are specific questions that you have, things that maybe you want to say. Like, I think sometimes people leave feeling like, not only did I want to ask that, but I wanted to say this thing to him.
Good point.
So
Yeah.
I think if there's anything else that you want to say, I think it's important to say all that, because what you don't want to do is then leave the conversation and be like, well, I didn't get to say this, or like I should have asked that. And then you feel like you have to reach out, and that's where you're not going to. That's what makes it hard to move on, is like the reaching out after this closure session. Like, this is going to be it. And then I think there has to be no contact. I've told you this personally, and like I stand by, if you want to move on, you pretty much have to go no contact. So almost committing yourself to whatever is said or not said at the end of this, that getting that last bit of information isn't going to make it feel any better, or it's just kind of like mind games that you're playing with yourself. Well, if I find out this answer to this question, or if I'm able to just say, the way you handled this was really made me feel terrible, that somehow that's going to make you better able to move on. You're having this, which is great, but after this, I think it has to be no contact. And honestly, this is a case for distraction. I think make a plan for that night, go out with some girlfriends and distract yourself. Or, right, I always say there's kind of like, in these cases, it's good to go to either extremes. Like either one extreme, like be like, okay, I'm going to sit at home, I'm going to cry, I'm going to feel my feelings, I'm going to like more in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to really go into my feelings, or make a plan with some friends and like distract yourself. But that place in the middle where you're like, I'm not really going to fully feel what I'm feeling, but I'm just going to like talk about it a bunch in like an angry, not feel my feelings way, or overanalyze, or that's probably the least helpful place you can be in.
I think that's great advice. I would also add, I think you can block the number after the meeting.
Yep.
And you could tell him you're blocking if you want. I think that's good for your mental health. And unfollow on everything. I think you do a cleanse.
Oh, agree with that. Yep. You do not need to be seeing anything like social media wise. Agree. All right. Well, sorry you're going through this. This is really hard. Good luck. Definitely keep us posted. Thanks for the update. Yeah.
Let us know how it went.
Yeah, you're going to be okay. This is for the best. It sounds like this person is not good at communication, which I would say is, if you want longevity in a marriage and deep connection for a long period of time, communication is important. So the way he handled this, I think, is an indication that he might not be the best long-term partner right now.
Yeah. Dodged a bullet.